Average at best today, average at best in the future. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down all the Power 5 teams, delivering for you personnel breakdowns and our prediction for each team in the Power 5, plus the major independents. We now enter the SEC. We're done with the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC. Please check out all those videos and then get the summary videos at the end of each conference so we explain how we arrived at our conference standings as we head toward the college football playoff predictions. We start at the bottom of the SEC, or what is typically the bottom of the SEC, by one game, not necessarily the technical fact last year because Vandy went 1-7 and Tennessee went 0-8, so they won the head-to-head, but that's not going to stay that way for long. When people think bottom of the SEC, Vandy automatically comes to mind. They are the fill-in-the-blank for the worst in the SEC. Derek Mason's a fine man by all indications. He's also an average head coach by all indications, average at best. He was an excellent defensive coordinator at Stanford. His defenses have been very good in spots, but not consistently good at Vanderbilt, and they weren't last year. 1-7 in the SEC, 5-7 overall. He seemed overwhelmed the first year. He had some carryover talent from the James Franklin era that won back-to-back 9-game seasons, and then James Franklin left for Penn State. Of course, Derek Mason comes in, and his first season was deplorable. They did go to a bowl game 2 years ago, were annihilated by NC State. They get almost to postseason play last year, in part thanks to a Kansas State win and a layup in the other 3 non-conference games. So Derek Mason, I don't want to say he's on the hot seat. I don't necessarily know what the standards are at Vandy. They've been basically no standards in the past. James Franklin won 18 games in 2 years and won back-to-back bowl games. I don't know that that's the standard. I would think that if you get to postseason play 3 or 4 out of 5 years at Vandy and win maybe 9 games once in a while, but generally you're winning 6 or 7 games, that everybody's going to be happy. And Derek Mason might be able to do that, especially if they continue to schedule nothing in the non-conference. Okay, the offense under Mason has been generally deplorable, aside from one guy who has saved them the past 2 years, and that's Kyle Shermer. 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 58% passer last year, 2,823 yards. All those stats taken into context with a lack of a running game in particular. Ralph Webb, yes, piled up stats over the course of his career, but in terms of success rate in the running game, it wasn't there, and the receivers were second rate in the SEC, not up to SEC standards, and that's the story across the board, especially on offense. They did have a high success rate passing the football in terms of efficiency. Coming back here in 2018, Kalisha Lipscomb, he caught 37 passes last year for 610 yards. Do the math. It's a high yards per reception rate, 8 touchdowns. Alex Stump being counted upon to make an impact coming in as a transfer from Ohio State. They've got Cam Johnson. He's a 4-star. Those are somewhat rare to find on the Vandy roster, so he may have to play immediately, as well as redshirt freshman James Bostic, another top recruit. We mentioned Ralph Webb. He's gone. He had a stellar career at Vanderbilt. 4,178 yards, 32 touchdowns, one of the 10 top all-time rushers in the history of the SEC. Not one of the 10 best in the history of the SEC, but statistically one of the 10 top rushers in the SEC. But the rushing numbers were very pedestrian last year, so maybe they get a jolt from Illinois transfer Keshawn Vaughn. He was the AA Mr. Football in Tennessee coming out of high school and the number 1 rated running back in the state, and he chose to go to Illinois. Well, he has transferred back. He sat out 2017. He ran for 1,000 yards in 2 seasons at Illinois, including some impressive efforts against Purdue, 180 yards, 116 against North Carolina, 98 against Nebraska when they actually had a decent defense back in 2015. So we'll see if he can impact the offense in the running back position. Kari Blasingame is a guy that took the field as a freshman, looked like he was going to be an impact player, but rarely saw the football last year with 147 yards, so his career has leveled off. The offensive line run blocking was really bad. Has to improve. Left tackle Justin Skyle is back for 2018. Let's get to the defense. This is the calling card of Vandy, and when Vandy was winning under James Franklin, it was about protecting the football on offense, playing field position, and winning with defense. And they've had a number of stars in recent years, topped off by Zach Cunningham's performance 2 years ago. But so Mason is a defensive guy, and the defense has actually gotten worse since he's been there. 91st in success rate versus the run last year. And they've lost a couple nose tackles and a couple inside linebackers that would note that the inside rushing game for the opponents may improve even more this season. Dari Odeyingbo and his brother, Deo, they're back. Dari in particular, a playmaker, 15.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. Outside linebacker Charles Wright, he's back with 9 tackles for loss and 7.5 sacks. They've got a corner in Jawan Williams, who had 39 stops, but they have little depth anywhere on the defense. They did have a very solid recruiting year in the secondary for 2018. Those guys might be pressed into play. The special teams, awful across the board. This goes back to coaching. The return game, the coverage, the punting, all awful. They only hit 3 of 7 field goals. And I saw that stat, and I checked the schedule to make sure, did they only kick 3 field goals the whole season? Yes, they only kicked 3 field goals and only attempted 7, and probably would have attempted more had they trusted their field goal kicker in 2017. The non-conference schedule, of course, highlighted by the Week 3 trip to Notre Dame. Middle Tennessee and Nevada, no gimmies. They should win those games. So I'm going to give them wins across the board in the non-conference, excluding the trip to South Bend. So they go 3-1. So they have made their way halfway to postseason play, but then it gets awfully difficult. They do play what is expected to be the 2 worst teams in the SEC Western Division. Not bad teams, especially when you consider the Ole Miss talent on offense, but they play the Rebels and the Razorbacks. So there's opportunity for win there. They do have a 57 win percent probability against Tennessee at the end of the season as it stands right now. I expect that to go down. I think Tennessee is going to put together a decent season. So it's going to be a struggle for Vandy to win games. I'm stretching it to 2 wins. That means they beat Arkansas or Ole Miss, and they win 1 game in the division, whether it be Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, somebody that they'll be able to drop in conference play coming off 1-7. 4-8 overall for Vandy. So they get no closer to postseason play. They take a step back in terms of overall record. And there it is for the Commodores. 4-8, 2-6 in the SEC. In the comments section, leave your prediction. Would love to see it. I want to see the ceiling. I want to see the floor for Vandy football and everybody else. And, of course, join our newsletter that is mailed every Monday during the college football season, starting with Week 1, September 3rd. You'll get a channel update. You'll get news, stats, facts, trends from the previous weekend that you won't find anywhere else. And also my take on college football for the weekend. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, just send your email and your name to markrogerstv@gmail.com. We will see you next time with more from the SEC.